Hey guys, so in today's video, we're going to talk about wrist angles. What's the missing piece that a lot of people don't talk about when they're talking about wrist angles? Everyone talks about the flat left wrist, but there's more to it than just that. And I want to go over how to practice it and how it's going to help you hit the ball better. I want to talk today a little bit more about wrist angles. There's a ton of content and videos on the importance of wrist angles, and I've seen a lot of different videos about it. A lot of people talk about it, me included, and I want to talk a little bit differently about the wrist angles, how to practice them, why they're important, and maybe give you a little bit of a different perspective. What I see that happens is everyone really emphasizes the importance of a flat left wrist or lead wrist when you go and play. And me too, we just did a video on that not long ago. But not everyone can think about their left hand and left wrist and get that left wrist flat. Almost everyone leaves out the fact that we have another hand on the club. We have a trail hand or right hand on the golf club, and you training in how to use your right hand for a lot of you is going to work a lot better than trying to train in your left hand. So that's sort of the emphasis here, is training in your trail hand wrist conditions, not just the left wrist. And we're going to talk at length, and have already, about the importance of a flat to bowed left wrist at impact, during the backswing, downswing, and follow through. But the reality is, when I hold on to this club, there's two hands on there. So what my right wrist does, my left wrist must follow, and vice versa. So if I were to have a club in my hand with my grip and my left wrist was flat like this, and I put my normal grip on there, my right wrist would be in a position where it's slightly bent backwards. So there'd be a little bit of angle here in my right wrist at the top. If I were to make my right hand, my right wrist perfectly flat like this, and I took my grip and added my left hand, that would automatically put my left hand into a cupped position. Can you see that there? Right hand flat means left hand cupped. That would be bad. If I took my right hand and I bent it back, so I made the back of my right hand get closer to the back of my forearm or palm up towards the sky, and I put the club in my hand like that with it bent back, took my left hand and matched it, automatically, what does that do to my left hand? It makes it flat or slightly bowed. I can't possibly, if I take a normal grip, have my right wrist completely bent backwards like this. You should feel a little something here in your forearm. I can't possibly do that with a normal grip and not have my left hand flat or slightly bowed. So when I get up to the top, if I have my right wrist, here's completely flat. If I have my right wrist all the way bent back, so this angle here is as much as I can make it, and I just lay my grip in there, automatically that gives my left wrist flat. Automatically. I can't bend my right wrist all the way back like this and have a cupped left hand position if I have a neutral grip. I could never do that. If I have a neutral grip, I can't possibly not have that. Bend your right wrist all the way back and your left wrist will be flat at the top automatically. And this is something that I don't see a lot of people talk about, and I don't see a lot of people trying to practice. Everyone's trying to get this flat or bowed, and I see a lot of people do that weird and it doesn't work for them. Whereas if you just get your right wrist and get that back bent back as far as you can, your left wrist is going to be flat by itself. So I hope that makes sense. Right hand straight up like this, right wrist needs to go back. Now how do you apply this? If I take a normal grip like so, like this, at address, my right hand and wrist is obviously pretty darn flat, right? So I need to go from completely flat to completely bent this way by the time I get to the top of my backswing. So from this angle, completely flat right wrist, completely bent right wrist at the top. And you see that puts my left arm or my left hand in a perfectly flat position, keeps my club face square. So some people like to do it right in the takeaway. If I go from a flat right wrist, and then by the time I get to first parallel, I already have my right wrist in a maximum bent back position. If you do that right in the takeaway, right wrist flat to bent, and just transport that same angle all the way up to the top, you're perfect, you're set. Some people don't like to do it in the takeaway, and they feel it more gradually and just get it completely bent at the top. Would look like this. Again, right wrist max bent back there. And then some people like to do it more in the transition. The reality is if I go up to the top, my right wrist is bent back as far as I can. If I come down during the downswing, watch this. If I straighten my right wrist out, what does that do to the shaft? It gets steeper, more vertical. It opens the club face up. If I go to the top and I keep my right wrist bent, What does that do to the shaft? Lays it down, puts it behind me, shallows it out, squares the club face up. Here's it straightened, face open. Here's it bent back. I did literally nothing different other than bend my right wrist back, and it completely changes where the shaft is in space, and it changes the club face orientation. Right wrist is bent all the way back, club behind me, face square. Do nothing else but straighten my right wrist out. Where's the club go? Outside opens the face. I'm gonna do nothing else but bend my right wrist back. Puts the club behind me and closes the face. Again, which one of these looks like a good player, here or here? It's this one, right? So even if you don't like doing it up to the top, max bend, wherever you're at the top, max bend it in transition. So go from wherever you're at, if it's somewhat bent, and bend it all the way in transition. And what is that gonna do? It's gonna shallow the shaft and square the club face up, right? And then heck, I'd do that all the way down into my impact position. If I get to impact, here's my right wrist perfectly flat, right? Shaft back, face neutral. If I bend my right wrist completely here and just transport that in, what does that look like? Shaft leaning forward, face square. Right wrist flat, not good at impact. Right wrist bent, very good at impact. The right wrist for a lot of you guys could be literally like a game changer and key to you hitting the ball more solid than you ever have before. Having the club face square, having your downswing swing direction right. None of you are gonna bend your right wrist back too much. You can't bend your right wrist back too much, ever. You can't do it too much here, you can't do it too much here, and you can't do it too much in transition. And if you got to impact with a right wrist that was completely bent and held it even past impact, other than 0.01% of you that's not good for, you would hit the ball freaking better. So if you can't do it with your left hand and your left wrist, do it with your right hand and right wrist. Maximum bend back. So I hope that makes sense. It's just a different way to do the same things. You guys have to do some things like this and train in your arms and hands. If you're not hitting the ball solid and good, you got to get out of this, take my hands out of it stuff. You got to train your arms and hands to hit the ball solidly. So I hope that makes sense. Leave us a comment down below if you have any questions.